into any of that. For those of you watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the video and share it if you can. Really helps us get in front of more viewers. And for those of you listening on Spotify, Apple, or any other podcasting platform, please follow and give us a 5-star review if you can. Again, with the algorithms, really helps get us in front of more listeners and obviously bring more fans to the pod. Let's get into it then. Obviously, Arsenal 1-1 throughout full-time and extra time, and we lose on penalties 5-3 to obviously Man United, the team that do not lose penalties. First half is pretty boring, to be honest with you. Both teams not great. Not many chances, not really many attempts on goals outside of the disallowed goal from Martinelli. I'm not going to argue with it. It should have been disallowed. That's totally fine. But again, just another example of Arsenal having possession for the sake of possession without actually doing anything with it. And Man United actually playing pretty well, being quite compact. Again, you don't have to be great defensively to stop us from scoring right now. We couldn't put it past bloody Titus Bramwell at this point, so it doesn't really matter who you are. But second half, obviously, it comes alive a lot more. Bruno Fernandes, great goal, exactly how you'd expect probably to score based off of us trying to hold a lot of possession. A great quick counter attack, great play from Garnacho, and then the madness begins, and Diogo Dalot gets sent off for a second yellow card. I don't think you can necessarily argue with that second yellow card specifically. I think it was the stupidest thing that he could have done. But the ref was definitely throwing cards out left, right, and centre, particularly for you lot. And I know a lot of your fans had something to say about that, so we can get into that a little bit later. But he gets sent off for a second yellow, and we immediately take back a little bit of control, and you see Gabriel score a deflected effort that Bayındır absolutely fluffs. You seem to have found the Turkish Onana at that point in time. I don't know what happened to him for the rest of the game, but at that point in time, he was the Turkish Onana. And then, it continues that way. I think Arsenal still look pretty decent. It does kind of even out a little bit more. And then comes the controversial decision. Again, this game had a little bit of everything, really. I think the thing it was missing maybe was quality football, but it had everything else. And Maguire gives away a penalty that, I'm going to be honest with you, at the time, I was like, yeah, fine, just give it to me. I don't really care. And I was thinking of really trying to defend it, but it's not a penalty. He barely touches him, and Havertz falls to the ground like an absolute, sack of potatoes. And then from there, going back to the idea of the game having everything, everyone starts beefing each other. and Ugarte's just dashing bloody Havertz on the ground. Garnacho's got his big gnashers out. Everything's happening. And it reminds me of like a much softer version of the old fights that we used to have back in the day between Arsenal and Man United. It was like a really, really 2024, 2025 version of that. But yeah, that seems to do the trick and put Odegaard. I can't say put him off because I think it was a decent penalty. But it seems to buoy Bayındır enough to get him to bloody save it. And again, he turns from Turkish Onana to somehow Turkish Neuer, and man saves that penalty. So momentum from that point truly out the window. But we do manage to keep on kind of peppering the goal a little bit. But I don't think with quite as much belief as we had before the missed penalty. He keeps saving. Bayındır does a lot in that game really. And outside of that first goal, you would have said he'd probably be man of the match based off of his overall performance. But yeah, makes two great saves from Rice. Really, Rice, I'm going to be honest with you, should do better. But when it comes to should do better, the king himself, King Kai, skies two chances. Typical King Kai, doesn't put his bloody laces through it. He's useless and smashes it over the bar twice. Not even smashes it, scoops it, fluffs it. I don't know what he does with it. He somehow p-rollers it without it touching the floor into the air. Close. So yeah, we go to extra time. Man United continue what they're doing. It's working really, really well. We both actually have some good chances in extra time. You guys have a pretty good chance too. Raya makes a really, really good save. And then you've got De Ligt doing what you'd want him to do when he comes into the team and what you'd expect from him off of the background. And he makes a great clearance off the line to prevent old Bumhole Eyes himself from scoring. So we get into pens. And I don't even want to talk about it from there. Havertz again, absolute useless donkey. misses, or I guess it's saved. And David Raya, who knows what you're doing, mate? You are. It reminds me of that Jim Carrey movie where man's just pressing buttons and controllers and going fast forward. He's just like about 5 seconds ahead of the play, diving in all kinds of ridiculous directions. I feel like he must have had a bet on or something, because some of those were just disgraceful. And then to make it worse, bloody Squirtsy ends up scoring the winning penalty and then doing the fucking gun fingers, the Robbie Keane celebration in front of the crowd. So yeah, all round stinker. We'll get straight into it. Bayindir, Bruno Fernandes, Gabriel, Martin Odegaard. I'll start with the Man United players. Bayindir, Fernandes, great games. Diogo Dalot, stinker. What do you want to comment about those ones? Let's focus on Bayindir first, maybe.
Yeah, no, I think calling him the Turkish Onana, describing his transition from the Turkish Onana to the Turkish Neuer was class. I was going to call him the Turkish Alisson, but I saw a stat that Alisson has faced like 12 shots and conceded 9 goals since he's been back. So I'm not going to use that for him, because the Neuer comparison's a bit better, because he I don't know what happened to him, because it wasn't only that he fluffed the punch that led to the Gabriel goal, he couldn't kick for toffee. You know when you see that one kid when you're playing Sunday League and they can't kick the ball? Like, it looks like they're putting all their strength in it and it's just they've got nothing. And every kick he did, it either P-rolled, went straight out to touch like he was trying to kick for goal, like in a rugby game or something. He all round looked really bad. But with the context of the fact that his last game was against Spurs in the Carabao Cup, where him and Forster were going band for band for who's the most useless goalie, and he lost. I understand why his confidence was on the floor, but the turnaround was mad, because it's that I tell you what, your description and analysis of that game is hilarious. Most of which I agree with, but some of the things I want to try and caveat with giving credit to certain players as well on the other side. So Bayindir, people hammering Odegaard, I get it. He's the captain. He's the hair flicker. He's the hip shaker. He's the tempo setter of Arsenal. But that was a good penalty. Yeah, the photographer. That was a good penalty. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna hammer Odegaard for that. That was a good penalty. He put it in the bottom corner, and Bayindir just leapt like a salmon and somehow managed to not only stop it but prevent a corner, which is like a penalty for you guys. So he did unbelievable on that save. And then I agree with you a bit more about the saves afterwards. Rice should have scored that header. He made it easy for him, and that was like a camera save, to be honest, Bayindir did. The second one is a bit of a better save, because that is going in the corner, and then he kind of flicks around the post. But you'd still expect Rice to score from there. So it was kind of a bit of both, a bit of fluffing and a bit of credit to Bayindir. But overall, man, he went from looking so shaky to so sturdy and like he was going to save everything on that penalty. I've never seen like someone's whole match turn around on the drop of a hat like that. Like it's literally it was startling. But yeah, Havertz, boy, man. I mean, let's keep with the credit stuff. Bruno, again, silencing those people that have got agendas against him. I swear to God, because it's
I wonder who you're talking about with that one.
No, there's actually millions of people that hate Bruno, right? You look online, a lot of United fans don't like Bruno, and I've tried to always keep level-headed on it. I understand. He infuriates me too. There's some games where he's like on the ball, he's just using it like a bloody. Like a detonator, he's just throwing it away all the time. And then off the ball, he does stupid stuff sometimes. He's got sent off, 3 times this season already, one of which got rescinded. I know that one was harsh on Maddison, but the other 2 he deserved. So he can be infuriating. But in the last couple of games, going to Anfield and the Emirates back-to-back, and even though we didn't actually win either game, really, if you look at the actual 90 minutes or 120 minutes in this case, we drew both games. He's been really, really good in both. I think the Liverpool game he was better, but he was good in this game as well. He was very economical with the ball. That finish was next level. Like he absolutely laced it, and it bobbled as well. So you give credit to to Garnacho for the run and taking advantage of Gabriel's little slip and mistake. But he gives a Xerxes pass to Maguire that he did at Anfield, and Bruno just
which is
absolutely
par for the course with Garnacho. Final ball Garnacho. He does it. He can't.
Yeah.
He can't play a final ball to save his life. Bruno does really well.
Not a clean one, because if you think about the FA Cup against Liverpool last year, when Ahmad scores the winner and we're at G's cousin's house flying about the room, he also gives Ahmad a bobbler then, and Ahmad does unbelievably to score it. He gives, what's his name? He gave Bruno a bobbler in the FA Cup final, and then Bruno does that disgusting no look pass to Kobe for the goal. That is Garnacho. He's got things he needs to work on, but he doesn't often give a nice smooth assist. I mean, to be fair, the Ahmad one against Liverpool was good. That was a nice clean one. But a lot of the time he gives stinky passes. But Bruno absolutely lashed it in. And you're right though, that I thought Gabriel was good for you though. Like, obviously he made a mistake for that goal, but other than that, him and Saliba ate up Højlund.
Yeah. And I mean, he got us back into the game. Even if he's making mistakes, he got us back into the game, which I can't say for Saliba getting megged by Squirty.
Twice.
But
I mean, Gabriel's
man was doing the shaky leg. He was on thin ice at that point in time, both figuratively but also literally. But he needs to do a Cucurella and put his boots in the bin, because I don't know what he was doing there. I was tap dancing.
Not only did he tap dance and fall on his ass, he pulled Jorginho down with him, which was absolutely hilarious. Part of that clip is he goes down fighting, but he pulls his own man down. But no, Gabriel, he's got to be one of your top scorers at this point, surely, because I mean, I'm not taking a piss out of you.
Well, if Havertz is our actual top scorer with bloody 7 goals or whatever it is, Gabriel's probably not far away from that. And we'll get onto that in the whole Arsenal striker crisis right now. But Gabriel may very well be, he's at least in our top 5. I'd argue he's probably even higher than that.
He's got to be, because you scored from set pieces. I mean, this one isn't necessarily from set piece, but he's just good in the air. Let's be honest, it's not about set pieces. He scores a lot of goal. There you go.
He's our crazy. 4th highest scorer in the Premier League, at least.
Let's go on to the final one that we've jotted down, because Odegaard, I think this is the one that's been quite divisive I've seen online. I've got my opinion about how I thought he played, but what's your opinion? Do you think he had a good game? Obviously, he was involved in a lot of the big moments, but what do you think of his game?
I think it was an average Odegaard performance, which I would argue is, in comparison with other cams in the league and in the world, above average. I would give him a 7 out of 10. I think the missed penalty, as you've said, I was a bit harsh on him. It was a good penalty, or it was a good enough penalty in most cases. I would say 99% of cases is a good enough penalty to score. And he put a bunch of chances on the plate for Havertz, who flopped them. So I think in any other, what I'm going to call normal circumstance, aka Bayern Deer doesn't turn into Neuer and Havertz doesn't turn into a donkey, he comes away from that game with a goal and maybe 1 or 2 assists. So I know that people want to hammer him for his performances since he's come back from injury. But at the end of the day, this is not the performance to hammer him on. You can hammer him maybe for his leadership or captain, whatever, in that case, because he's the captain of the team and we lost in the FA Cup to Man United. That's totally fine if you want to hammer him for that purpose. But at the end of the day, I don't think you can hammer him from the perspective of a player performance. I think he was pretty good. Of course, he's wasteful too, right? He's trying things. He's pretty much our only creative outlet. He's got, at the moment, not great players to work with in front of him. He's got Havertz and I mean Sterling for a portion of that game as well. Not looking good. So I understand they're not the best players for him to be playing with. So I understand why it may not end up looking like the best for him. Obviously, Jesus comes off injured. You'd hope that Jesus would be a good link with him. He comes off injured at 40 minutes. Sterling comes on, actually doesn't have a terrible performance. But my point, right? It's Odegaard, the Odegaard-Saka connection is probably the strongest connection that we have and one of the stronger connections between a midfielder and attacker in the league in general, right? And when you don't have Saka that he can rely on in terms of runs, in terms of his touch, in terms of being able to finish his dinner, you can understand why Odegaard's output does go down slightly. It's just a bloody shame that we don't have anybody else apparently in this team that can finish. So I'm not going to hammer him for this performance. I think he was good enough for us to have won, right? We should have scored the penalty. Havertz should have scored at least one of his chances, and that's that. If you want to hammer him for the previous performances, go ahead. That's fine. Like he was pretty stinky in a couple of the matches that we've played recently. That's totally fine. But let's not use this as the example for him being stinky. It's just people overreacting because we lost to Man United. And it's partly overreacting because we've been punching down, as Dave Chappelle would say, to you lot for the last however long that you've been stinky. So when we now get upstaged by you, of course we're going to go and look at the figureheads of the team like Odegaard, Havertz in this case. We're going to look at them and think, what are you lot doing? Like, why are we losing to Man United? So it's at home of all places as well. It's not like we lost to you at Old Trafford or anything. It's at the Emirates, man. Like, we should be better than this. So that's where I stand on it. Maybe you disagree, but I think he was good enough.
Now, I think if you actually look at the biggest, this game is an interesting one. You said you had the stats open, and I think the stats make for tough reading for you guys to lose based on looking at just the stats, right? Because you've had 25 or 26 odd shots. You had like the XG was 3.7 something, I think.
70% possession, 3.14 expected goals. Yeah, we had 12 corners for God's sake. Like Arsenal, those are like corner FC. How are we not scoring one of them?
But my point of bringing up the stats is, some of it is fair, I think, and is true to how the game went. Some of it's a bit misleading. I think some of it's like you need to add context to it, because I think if you looked at the game before the sending off, you had more of the ball, but I think the stats at halftime was like 60-40 or something like that, and the chances there was, like you said, there was virtually none. And then the first few chances of the second half fell to us. And then it's pretty much directly after Dalot gets sent off, Havertz skies one over the bar, and then Gabriel equalises and everything goes wild, right? And you get basically all the big chances after that, where a lot of those stats come from. So I think with that context, I think the 10 men part is the most important stat. With 10 men, you were able to create some big chances, which is fine, but you weren't able to convert. And then, relying on a team being down to 10 men to create chances is probably where, we had this age-old argument about the chance creation not being strong enough and, varied enough to be able to get you enough to score. But you did have 10 men to face, and everything that you created came from Odegaard, let's be honest. So that he can't have had a bad game with that in mind. I mean, there's some clips going around of him like doing pirouettes and doing stupid shit on the ball, which I understand for the more like kind of grumpy, disgruntled Arsenal fan, the no-nonsense kind of, gravy and chips type of fan might be like, why is he faffing about with all that against a 10-men Man United? Just go forward and attack and penetrate. But Odegaard's not really that kind of cam. If you think about the cams that we have in modern football, he's not a Musiala, De Bruyne type cam. I know people compare him tongue-in-cheek, or some maybe seriously, to De Bruyne, but stylistically they're nothing alike. De Bruyne is actually pretty powerful
he's more
runner.
Like Ozil.
He's more
like Ozil than any of those guys.
He is. He's more flair. He's more about touch and intricate moves and kind of floating on the pitch. Whereas De Bruyne is kind of like, and Musiala is kind of almost like a De Bruyne 2.0 in terms of style. They're like long rangey, powerful runners who like just go for the throat and like go for the kill, with not only their creation but their like physicality. And so to expect Odegaard to do stuff like that, it's not going to happen, guys. And I've seen people say maybe he's more of an 8 than a 10, and I get where that comes from, but I think he can do the 10 fine. You just have to have the right kind of cast around him and not put expectations on him to do everything. And I get it, the captain's armband brings XYZ, but I mean, like there are too many people being reactionary on Odegaard now. Some people have agendas. Some people maybe just have been waiting for the hate watch because he's been doing quite well, for the
He's an
last
easy
2.5
target.
seasons. But yeah, I don't
He's an
think
easy
this is the
target,
game.
right? Captain. He's the
It's not
captain.
the game
He's
to hammer.
arguably he's the best player that we've got on the pitch attacking wise, right? Like when Saka's not there, Odegaard is our best player, right? Let's be perfectly honest when it comes to attacking. So captain, best attacker. The fact that he's been a figurehead of the team in terms of goals, assists, etc. He's an easy target. But then you also add to the fact that the way that he plays, the reason why I say Ozil is because Ozil was always considered like a luxury player, right? Like he does things that if they come off, you're like, wow, this is straight street ball. He looks like a baller. And if it doesn't come off, you think, what is this twat doing, right? But the reason why we love them is because it comes off more often than it doesn't, right? And it's probably a reason why a lot of Man United fans get frustrated at Bruno too, right? You got to take the good with the bad. He's your main creative outlet. He's also going to be wasteful with the ball. And I'm not going to argue that like Musiala or De Bruyne or Wirtz don't lose the ball or give the ball away. They definitely do, right? Yes, they make unbelievable passes, they make unbelievable runs, but they also give the ball away a lot, right?
Yeah, of course.
So from my point of view, like, yes, you can hammer Odegaard for, again, he's a captain and we lost to Man United. That's fine. But anything about his performance is just scapegoating because we're angry as a fan base at what has happened. But I'll be honest with you, like, I would argue that there's been more Arteta hate than there's been Odegaard hate since that loss.
No, there has. And
So,
just to wrap up the Odegaard part, like it's just also I think there might be some just misprofiling or like maybe putting expectations a bit too high for him because he's a very good cam and he's been one of your best players and I agree with you attacking wise after Saka he is right up there. He's the if Saka's the like the 1A he's the 2A of your best attacking players, right? Get it. But he can't do everything himself. And to expect him to be De Bruyne levels, we're talking about putting De Bruyne in the conversations with greats. And that's after he's done that for how many years at City. Odegaard has not done that yet. So having that expectation on him, other than being like a Twitter youngster and just getting too overexcited with the last couple of years, you need to let it breathe. And you can't be hammering him for this. It's just like something to go, all right, chill. Odegaard is not this character that can do everything by himself. We've actually seen when he was out, you missed him, but you still managed to get better results with Saka there. Saka is your holy grail. He is the player that can do everything for you. He is. And he's not Salah yet, but he's what your team, he's the focal. Yeah. He's your franchise player. To not make it Player FC and do the American crap, he is your guy. Odegaard is not, but he's very, very good, and he's in the top 5, top 3 cams in the league. Still, I don't change any of that stuff. But yeah, to hammer him on this performance is not right. But yeah, you make a good point about the Arteta stuff. Should we get into that then?
Yeah, I wanted you to comment briefly just on Dalot. I mean, just comment quickly because it's the only negative part of what you're going to be talking about. Let's be honest. So everything else is going to be happy. I want to see you unhappy a little bit. All right. Surely you've got to be absolutely livid that you've got another sending off because you've had a lot of red cards. As much as we've had red cards, you might be getting close to us this year.
Well, no, we're catching up.
Red cards you've had, mate.
Yeah, we're catching up. So I can start with the negatives because I want to give some more like some credit to the United players as well. A couple that we haven't mentioned yet, but I'll start with the negatives. I mean, he's an idiot, and I've been saying this about Dalot for like this whole season. Basically, I don't know what's going on with him. I feel like he's had shaky moments and been ripped at times. Think of Jesus sending him packing, and there's been moments where you've gone, wow, ouch, that one hurts for Dalot. But there's a fully formed, developed bozo gene in Dalot. And it's going to take a colossal effort for us to speak about him, for example, in a way that we've spoken about Gabriel, who we had a similar assessment of in his early days for Arsenal, where there would be stupid moments where he'd make mistakes and stuff. Dallow's racking them up like no one's business, and he's so stupid. The way he gets that red card, I would put it on a par with as stupid as that Bruno one was the other day, where he went flying in and did two of the same challenges. And it was the most obvious. It was the most obvious back-to-back yellow card offences you could commit. Like don't get me wrong, Mourinho sells it, but he should sell it, and Dallow's the one to blame because he's an idiot. He made a stinky touch, which again is, I'm not going to take that away from the problem as well. His performance on the ball has been god awful, except for that game at Anfield. Which puts him in a tricky position, but then it's just so stupid and naive to go with flying in like that. You don't need to make contact with the player for them to have to, jump over you and make a meal of it. And to quickly pivot, that referee didn't need he was your 12th man. He didn't need any encouragement to do some bullshit on that day. And I'm not saying it like, you guys have been screwed plenty of times by referees, but that referee was god awful. God awful. And at the end, he was also making god awful decisions against you guys as well. But for the majority of the game, everything we did, every challenge was a yellow card pretty much immediately, if not very quickly after the second challenge. He didn't give obvious free kicks like that Bruno one where he's bundled over on the edge of your goal.
Comes off or whatever, doesn't it?
Exactly. And then Bruno gets a yellow, understand for dissent and whatever. But I would be losing my rag as well. That was the most obvious free kick I've ever seen. And then the penalty, you talked about it. That is one of the worst decisions I've seen in my life. It was such a bad penalty to give away. I saw it in real time and thought, I wasn't even shocked because of how bad that ref was performing up until then. But still, I was like, wow. I was predicting something like that might happen while I was watching the game. But I was kind of thinking it couldn't be that bad. But that referee... Yeah, Howard Webb. Come on, bro. Step up. I'm hoping to see a David Coote video of that ref. He's got to be out there. We need to get him off the pitch because he was shocking, man. But yeah, Dallow, you're right. Dallow was naive and he put us in that position because we were quite compact and defensive, like you said, before the red card. But I don't think the stats would have ended up anywhere near that if he didn't get red carded. I've got to be honest. I'm not saying we would have won. I don't know how the match would have panned out in terms of the result. But before that, you were slightly more dominant on the ball, but it was very close.
Not... There wasn't a clear winner. Again, I think it probably would have gone to extra time and probably gone to penalties. Anyway, I think I could see maybe us nicking a late goal, but I could also equally see you guys nicking a late goal too, if he doesn't get sent off. So, I mean, maybe in the end it all works out because you end up winning, but you made it way harder than it probably had to be. But at the same time, I do think it galvanised the rest of the players on the pitch. So Dallow's a clown for what he did, but to an extent, it may have galvanised your performance a little bit. And I guess on top of that, I think the Bayern save definitely galvanised a lot of your performance. I think once you realised, hold on a minute, it's not going to be quite as easy for them as they probably hope it's going to be, and the momentum's not in their favour. Actually, we can do this. So yeah, I think it was stinky from Dallow. I agree with you. Andy Madley had a stinky game. I hope we have him for all of the rest of our games this season. And that's saying a lot because I hate referees with an absolute passion. But he might be the only one that I've ever thought, you know what? We'll have a couple more games with you, mate, because the rest of them are. Yeah, I want them took out behind the back of the stadium and put down.
He's going to be your Michael Oliver. I'm telling you right now. He's going to be like Man City to you guys. He's going to be Michael Oliver to you. That's how bad it was. Yeah. Obviously, I thought it was a setup at some point. How bad he was doing. But you know what? I agree with you. I think the Bayern point was the full stop on the shift of momentum, though. But I actually think the scuffle was when the pendulum swang, because before then we were being resolute and everything was all right. But I believe the thing that brought the squad close was they felt the injustice of the pen. The injustice of the pen, and then Baz, I'm calling him Baz now, like we all Man United fans are calling him Baz online now. Baz Maguire, he was not ramping, mate. He was calling him a scumbag, a house. He was basically saying everything we were saying to Havertz, and Ugarte and the little South American, like Jack Russell's got involved. Him, Licha, Garnacho, they all started. There's all these angles of Kai Havertz getting bounced before the pen, after the pen. It was like it collected the whole team together. And then I agree with you though. I think if Bayern doesn't save it, then we're back to square one. But the Bayern save, I think, just makes everyone go, yes, all right, we've overcome this injustice. Now let's go and win it. And yeah, it was kind of almost fate after that, I think. But it shouldn't have been with the chances you had.
No, agreed. I mean, we're going to talk about it now. Let's get into it. I've tried to avoid it enough. Let's talk about
Arteta. Arteta.
Yeah, what's it, Osama bin Teta or whatever they're calling him? Obviously.
Why is it always Osama? It's always Osama whenever they're cussing like a diabolical manager. It was Osama Bin Laden as well before. It's always Osama, man.
Yeah, I think he's an easy target for it. But obviously, yeah, well, let's get into it. Yeah, let's get into it then. We talked about Odegaard. A lot of people coming out and blaming him. As I said, I've definitely seen more Arteta blame than anything. I know a lot of, Turkish rants have been going around. A lot of AFTV rants going around about the club, about the owners, about Arteta. I'll ask you first, mate. Do you think do you think Arteta deserves a lot of the blame? Do you think he deserves more blame than the players? Do you think fans are going overboard? I want to hear your opinion before I weigh in here.
I don't know, man. It's a tricky one. I'll be real with you. This has been a long game, and what I mean by that is, I think when his decisions that are now looking like they're proving to be stinkers happened, a lot of us, and I'm including you, like for example Lincoln, who we had on the pod at the time, were not fans of some of the moves he was making, and I'm talking Havertz in particular, but also buying all the left backs,
Marino, Sterling.
Yeah. Well, Marino and Sterling are just like the cherry on top, right? But the other ones, even constantly getting defenders. There's enough. Jorginho.
Every single person that we got from Chelsea was always like, "Why the f we bought him?"
Yeah, well, yeah. I can resonate with that as well. We've got an injured one who's cost 60 million as well. So, but I think what's happened is a lot of people are doing "I told you so" now, and I think most logical, not like rose-tinted glasses fans were worried when you got Havertz. He wasn't coming, not the Chelsea thing, but it was the fact he wasn't coming. In like a bidding war or something, and it wasn't like people had optimism. It was like you were getting the scraps from Chelsea, and you were paying what a lot of people had problems for was that you were paying Wagyu beef prices for scraps of meat that you'd give to your dog. That's what the perception was, and then you're paying that person so much money. He's your highest paid player, so like I feel like all of that stuff is what people have been holding on to. They've had to bite their tongue, and when things were going decently last season, and recently when Havertz had scored a few goals this season, but now things are kind of swung the other way. People have been waiting for that moment to stick the knife in on Havertz and proxy stick the knife in on Arteta. But if you look at the cold hard facts, you finished second last season. You finished and took it to the last day. You finished second the season before, and you were leading the league for whatever, like 89% of the year or whatever it was, whatever the stat is. And this season you're in second. I know you're more points behind than you want to be, but you're still in second. So
I think we're technically third now because of the Nottingham Forest result, but we've got a game in hand.
Yeah. Well, you have been second for the most part of this league, right? So there's obvious things that you have to praise him for, and in these tough moments you can't just ignore that. Like, it's there for you to see. That's a massive progression from where you were. You were us like 5 years ago, and to go from there to where you are now, you have to praise him. It's been a large part to do with him, right? Let's be honest. It's not all about one person, but he's done a hell of a lot. What he's cocked up at is after, it seems like almost after that FA Cup win, he's not giving a shit about the cups anymore. And I know you've had some hard draws, but even within those hard draws, a lot of them you've been at home. I think there was one time you went to City away, which is hard, but you had Liverpool at home last season in the FA Cup and you lost it. You had us at home this year in the FA Cup and you lost it. Like, they're hard games, I get it, but you've been at home, so you could have won those games. You should have, I would argue, win those games. So he's almost not. He's achieved his goals in the league, which maybe he's prioritised, so that's good for him. But you're a big club, right? And big clubs are not just about one or the other. We look at Oli for us, just not to make it all about us, but a similar thing happened. He did well in the leagues, roughly, right? He got a second, third, stuff like that. But he was losing in finals to teams that he shouldn't lose and going out in other cups that he shouldn't. And the fans ultimately got sick and tired of it. And they wanted us to do well in everything. And then we got Ten Hag and he focused on the cups, it seemed like, got the trophies and stunk it up in the league. And he went, and people called him Ten Laden, right, and all that stuff. So Arteta has got, if he is, I hope he's not being sensitive about stuff, and he seems like he's got very strong character, and he's like not arrogant in a bad way, but got that arrogance that you need to be a top manager or top player or coach or whatever. So I hope it doesn't get to him, but he needs to realise that has been a big shortcoming, and if you don't win the league at some point soon, the finishing second it's almost like the sheen has come off it. And now your fan base, the expectations have risen back up again, and finishing second and doing the Liverpool special of being bridesmaids all the time is not going to cut it for you guys. You're not this shielding fan base like the Liverpool fans are, where I'm not cussing them, right? Because it can be seen as a good thing too. They're very protective over, what we might call managers or players or teams or whatever that have finished and not achieved goals. You guys are ruthless, man. You've seen the Henrys and the big dogs and won big trophies. Maybe not Champions League, but you've won all the other ones in prime time periods where you've had big competition as well. So you're used to, ultimately as a club, and most fans who are of a certain age are used to the glory days, man. They're not going to put up a second for too long. And it maybe in my mind it's going a bit early, but I'm not shocked. That's all I will say. I don't agree with it. I feel like he's got some blame, but it's just a bit of criticism. I don't think he needs to be questioned for his job. But the reality is, if these next couple of games don't go well and the league gets too far away, I would not be shocked if the fan pressure gets so big that things get sticky. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a very long answer, but I think he's done well, and I think it's not really fair, but I understand, and we all knew, right? We're part of this fan content sphere as well now. We knew that this was going to come.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great summary of it. I'm going to add a couple of things here and there. I agree with you. I think we were kidding ourselves. A lot of Arsenal fans were kidding ourselves. And I mean, partly we were a victim of our own success in a certain way, right? Because we still were performing decently well with some of the stupid decisions that we made, right? Like after Havertz, we've been able to keep up a decent level. Even he's looked decent at times. Jorginho's had good games here and there. Like, they haven't looked shockingly bad. Calafiori looked like a star when he was smashing goals in past Man City. We were loving it, right? And so I think we probably kid ourselves that that window was good enough. And there were obviously a select group of us at the time that were bringing it up and saying, you know what, this is not good enough. It's just honestly not good enough if we want to go. And I think the main thing was not that any of the signings particularly were awful, outside of really, in my opinion, maybe the Sterling signing. Even the Havertz one, I can convince myself at a certain point, because he used to be a bit of a wonder kid here and there. He's won the Champions League, like all of this stuff. You can kind of convince yourself maybe it's a decent signing and there's a way that it can work out. But the issue that we've got really is when you compare all those signings to what we blatantly need in the team. It was like when we go and buy all these different players, but we don't buy a left back when Zinchenko is clearly our worst position. Then we eventually now do fill it, and we've got this other gaping hole in our striker area of the pitch. And instead we're buying left backs. It almost seems like we're always 1 year behind what we're supposed to be doing, right? Like last year, we should have been buying a left back to replace Zinchenko, but we bought him this year. And I'm certain, with all of these rumors going around, maybe it might not be how I want it to be in terms of Isak, but I guarantee you next time we'll go and buy a fucking striker. And then I'll go and say, why didn't you do that last season? So it's almost as if we're always just a year behind on the signings that we make. And of course, we have stinkers in there as well. But it just honestly, that part is maybe bringing to light now, the transfer windows particularly have not been as good as they need to be. And I think it's not necessarily like some unique situation as if it doesn't happen to others. Like we're looking at Liverpool, they've been complaining for years that they didn't get the players that they wanted. They went and bought Arthur or they bought Chiesa when they should have been buying other players. And then you look at Man City, who were going and buying bloody Grealish for 100 million or this player and that player when they should have been reinforcing a lot of their team, And now they're going to go and spend however much on Kusanov and all these other dons. So it's not specific to Arsenal. A lot of other teams have got complacent. The issue that you've got is that we haven't won anything. We can't be getting complacent on our decision-making, our transfer windows this early. Like we've come second twice. We've been bridesmaid twice. There needs to be the hunger to go after it and really go and win. And in order to do that, you need marquee signings. And I thought this was changing when we went and bought Rice, but it appears that was maybe just to appease the fans at the time. I think it was a great signing, but then we go and let's be honest, that the money that we spent on Havertz is like tier 2. If we had just gone one tier up, spent maybe 20, 30 million more, we could have gone and got a world-class striker for that price, especially if you think about who was available around that time, right? So it just goes back to the point of like, what were we doing at that time, at that time? So, yeah, I think overall you're coming to see now that the decisions that were made were not as good as we could like kind of kidded ourselves to make out that they were. Even myself, I'm sure Lincoln to a certain point as well. Once the season had started, we just said, you know what, all right, we're Arsenal fans, we'll support them. We'll make the best of a situation, even if we don't necessarily agree with whoever we bought, right? But now you're starting to see, okay, in the tougher times, when we go out of the cup, it looks like we're not getting anywhere near the league. When it looks like, we're going to get knocked out the EFL, the Carabao Cup as well. Now everyone says, you know what? Are we writing the season off as well? Are we doing a Man United in terms of like after 10 hours left? Or are we just going to say, this season, let's just build? Because our fans aren't ready for that. And I always say to you a lot of the time, I always tell you, Man United fans are not humble enough yet. They haven't been humbled enough yet. They still have we're the best team in the world. We're like Real Madrid. We deserve to win, Sorao, etc., etc. And it's detrimental to your club, in my opinion, a lot of the time, right? And only once you get really humbled, when your manager's talking about relegation battles, or when you're finishing in the bottom half of the table, or not finishing, but when you're in the bottom half of the table and you're finishing outside of Champions League spots and all these other things, it's starting to humble you a bit, right? To the point where you actually do have the Liverpool spirit. And we forget, Liverpool had bloody Roy Hodgson, Brendan Rodgers. They had some nightmare managers in that time, right? I know you've had David Moyes, I've had Unai and whatever else, but I mean,
That's
Roy Hodgson. No, but you know what I mean. But Roy Hodgson, different level, right? So that kind of maybe bonded the team together. They had a lot of years of real struggle arsehole times. I get it. So they have become a lot more defensive of their manager. And I personally thought Arsenal fans had been humbled enough. Back-to-back 8th finishes. It's mental, right? Like, have people forgotten how bad we were? With certain men in our team that really, honestly, would not get into a League Two team these days. Like, this is what we're talking about. So, honestly, yeah, I'm not going to go too hard on Arteta. I think he has made poor decisions. I think he, to a certain extent, needs to be kept in check as a manager. It's not, 2003 anymore, not 2005 anymore. You can't be Arsene Wenger. You can't be Sir Alex Ferguson and run the club. You need other players or, other star players around you to do their jobs and to let you do yours. And I think he's an excellent head coach. I think he's definitely got a lot out of players that I thought were absolutely stinky. He's got a lot out of our young players. with all of his corny win, the dog and the bloody speakers and the training pitch and all this other stuff. Everyone makes fun of it, but he has done a really good job of galvanizing that team, building camaraderie between them. Everyone wants to make a joke about Zinchenko doing his little speeches on the pitch. They want to joke about us, giving charity penalties to Havertz. They want to joke about photography. They want to joke about all these different things. But at the end of the day, you can't complain when you look at that Arsenal team and say, hey, they aren't a team, right? So he's really good at the head coach part of it. I just need his transfer part or his player selection, his player ID part, maybe to be kept in check a little bit. And I mean, there have been rumours coming out about Edu and all this other stuff and why he's left and all that. But, I've seen these rumours going around about Rosiki's coming in to be our director of football and all this other stuff. And I'm just saying, no, don't give him anybody he knows that he can manipulate or, that will just give in to his will. Give me a proper director of football that is willing to tell you, Arteta, no, you're fucking wrong. Because we've seen this with Klopp before. Just because you're a great head coach and a great player manager and you can choose a great team and get the best out of your players doesn't mean you know fucking toffee about what a good player looks like from another team. Klopp is the best example of that. Man was trying to buy, was it Julian Brandt or whatever, or Draxler or whoever it was instead of Salah. He's a good player. No, I get it. But he's no Salah.
You're not Salah. Right? It's not Salah, yeah.
He's pushing for all these stinky signings that have ended up being relatively crap for Liverpool. And he needed his Michael Edwards to tell him, you're talking out your ass, mate. He's shit. I'm going to get you this guy instead who's way better. And that's just the thing I fear about Arteta. And I think if he continues to consolidate power in the club and he does continue with these stinky-ass decisions, it's going to get real tricky because, when we had Edu, we could say, oh, what the fuck is Edu doing buying Sterling, getting Sterling on loan? Well, he ain't got Edu, or when, everyone thinks it's just Arteta making these decisions, he's going to get a lot of heat, right? So he needs to be very careful with that part of things. I think he needs to realise, yes, we've had some good signings, but we've also had some stinkers, and we still have gaping holes in our team. So I hope he does realise that, and I do think he needs a bit of a jolt every now and then from the fan base, but I don't think we need to be going overboard saying, we're fucking shooting or whatever Lee Gunner type says about people going that, right? Like, I don't think we need to be doing any of that, but he does need a jolt to say, you know what, mate, some of the stuff you've done has been shit, right? Like, I get your point about the cups, by the way, as well, right? Like, I get that. I'm looking back at the when we went out last year in the FA Cup to Liverpool, we didn't start our best team, and we only started bringing our best players on, or really started to change things up when we were losing, right? And I'll be honest with you, Liverpool didn't play their best team either, and we were at home and we still lost, right? We were playing bloody Kiwior, who scored an own goal. We were playing Reece Nelson, left wing. We were playing Ramsdale at the time, right? Like it's a bit stinky, right? Like we ended up. Remember when we were doing that whole madness of like Raya in the league, Ramsdale in the cups, right? Like he does take the piss when it comes to these cups, and I think it's because he's been prioritising the Champions League and Premier League, which is totally fine. I'm fine with that, but then you've got to fucking deliver one of them, mate.
Like, and now you've got
FA
a squad.
Cup is better than
now
no
you've
cup.
And now you've been building a squad because he's got to know, right? You're at a massive club. You can't just pick and choose your priorities. Of course, I mean, you can have priorities, but you can't have such a huge gap between them. You build a big squad so that your best teams, or a combination of your best players, can form enough options to be able to perform across all the cups. And maybe you drop the Carabao and you say, screw that one, and you concentrate on the three. But the way he's been doing it is, like you said, we're going to go for the league because we've put ourselves in the mix now, basically. And when we're in the Champions League, we're going to try and do something in that. And he's made progress on that, and that's all good. But, now he's at the point where you can't have such a huge drop-off from competition to competition in terms of how you perform. You can't be going out third round. I know Carabao's a bit different because you're in the semis, so he's made some progress on that. But you got a nice draw. I mean, Newcastle ended up playing themselves into form. So by the time you played them, it was a bit stinkier than it looked like when you drew them.
And they were our bogey team. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, even then, the other options were Liverpool and Spurs, which I know Spurs can be a bit stinky. But, there's all the drama about North London Derby. The Newcastle one was probably the one you wanted. to get through to the final, and that one's gone really badly on after the first leg. But you know what? We'll wrap up this Arteta thing quickly before we get to the preview. The thing I will criticise him on, and I do understand why the fans do get mad, because I think the pitch stuff, there's more good than bad, far more good than bad. But the stuff that you can criticise him is off the pitch. And I know some media have clipped him and they've got their agendas, but he's been feeding them far too easily over these last couple of weeks. He's said some absolute stupid stuff. Not in that what he's said is like he's intentionally said something outrageous, but isn't just like he's been naive, bro. Talking about the ball, he didn't literally say that it was the ball's fault, but they put it on a plate for him and he gobbled it. He fell for the trap and he got himself and made himself look stupid. He said a few other things in the press conferences which have been a bit dopey, and I feel like there's a couple of factors. Number one, the media are on him. Like, they don't love Arteta, right? It's very obvious they don't love Arteta. He's one of their big targets. They're big targets. Him and Ten Hag were always their big targets all the time. The second thing is, I don't think they understand his like personality, because he says things and he says it with a cheeky grin and a little smile where he's obviously saying it tongue in cheek.
They don't clock it. Yeah.
They don't clock it, and there's this like language culture barrier thing where they just take it for face value. So he'll talk about the ball being different, which is fair, but they'll write it like he said that they've lost the game, you know, because the ball was slightly different and it flies or whatever. So I understand why the fans are getting onto him like that for off the pitch stuff. I do. That's the only part I understand.
I mean, even that though, like let's be honest, what does that really make a difference to in terms of our performance? It doesn't really change anything. What it does do though, and what I agree with you on, is it gives rival fans something to take the piss out of us with, which as fans we don't enjoy. And then we're looking back at Arteta thinking, what the f*** have you said that for? Shut the trap. You know what I mean? I don't need people coming and telling me, oh, your manager's talking about the ball. Yeah, and also, I mean, the other thing is excuse making. The downfall of Ten Hag was, number one, lying. Right? Just and when I say lying, I don't mean that he was like, oh, he was just saying, oh, no, we had 20 players on the pitch, or saying something like that. But he was saying things that were completely conflicting with what you saw in front of you in terms of what the football looked like, his relationship with players, etc., right? So that was his first downfall. But the second one was making excuses all the time. You know, when he's talking about the Arsenal, what was it? What did he bring up like 4 times every interview, even 3 years after it happened?
It's the Garnacho disallowed goal at Arsenal, and the no penalty and stuff like that.
And then he talks about the injury crisis. He talks about, oh, I've won things already though. You know, I'm the second most successful manager since I joined. Like, it's the defensive excuse making that show the media you're bleeding. So I'm going to keep coming after you because I can tell I'm getting to you. And the same thing happened to Klopp at a certain point, right? As he started to get closer and closer to his breakdown, it happened to him too. Oh, it's 12:30 kickoffs. I hate them, and you guys are pissing me off. And he starts calling reporters fat and doing all this other craziness, right? Like, it shows that you're wounded to a certain extent and that they're getting to you. And that's the worst thing that you can do, because once you do that, they keep on doing it to you. And so that is the one thing I will say about Arteta is like, that's naive, but I'm not going to put a craziness on him, because I still think the bad actor in this situation is the media. And with Ten Hag, of course, I called him out as being naive. I don't think Arteta's quite at that level yet in terms of what he's saying in the media. But if it does continue, of course, I'm going to continue to call Arteta out. It's still early stages for me, so I'm still just going to leave it and say, you know what, the media are disgusting. But if it does continue and he does make even more blunders and gaffes, then I'm going to say, Arteta, mate, pull your finger out. Stop doing interviews, or just shut the fuck up.
Send Jova. Send Jova.
Exactly. Send Jova. Get Pat Rice out of retirement and stick him in front of him. I don't care what you do. Just stop talking. And even if you've got to do the Pep thing where you just babble that no one understands, I'm fine with that. That's the one benefit you've got of as not being a native English speaker. Just waffle that nobody understands. And just like make a little cheeky grin here and there and wear a turtleneck and you'll be fine. That's fine. But don't come out and actually make sense and say stupid stuff, because people can come at you. So, I mean, we can move on now. But yeah, Arteta. Yeah. The only other thing I want to bring up though is I don't think it matters what fans do unless they start going outside of the fucking stadium with Arteta out, like massive banners, and start doing protests and shit like that. there's no way the Cronkies are getting rid of Arteta. They fucking love him up way too much.
No chance.
Josh Kroenke flying in to help him out with signings. We're getting Zubimendi in the summer apparently, and whatever else. You know, you got fucking memes of the Irish guy singing Zubi Zubi Doo. You've got the Middle Eastern Don saying that he hopes that Sociedad lose every game now, and all this other stuff coming out. Like, Josh Kroenke's on job, and I think they love Arteta because from the perspective of, I know
they
that
paid him 15 million.
Exactly.
The proof is in his contract. He's the second highest paid manager. They love him. He is their man. That's the one thing I do agree with. When I saw Big Up Turkish, his fan cam was inspirational, right? But he was basically saying he has kind of put himself in a position where he's a bit of a company shield. So they love him. Like, he's done well on the pitch. They've paid him handsomely, and now he's saying they're the best owners that he's ever worked with. So let's be realistic. He's not going nowhere. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah. So I think when you're on your point, it's going to get sticky from the fan point of view. I agree with you, and the sentiment is going to go into the mud. I agree with that, but I just don't see it happening. That will be enough to get rid of him. So as much as all these people are saying, oh, you know, like Matitties, they're calling him, or whatever else, is saying, oh, at the end of the league, you've got to call for his head, right? After they just won the lottery and finally found a manager that they actually like after however many shit ones they've had, and they're trying to get us to do the same kind of thing as them. I get it. I know why rival fans are doing it, but as much as people are saying,
it won't work,
at the end of the season, you've got to put pressure on him to go out. Doesn't matter what we fucking do, mate. Unless we start voting with our feet and not going to games, not buying their shirts, our revenue's rising every year, right? We're doing much better. From a football point of view, of course, we want to win the leagues and all that. But let's be honest, Josh Kroenke and Stan and all them lot, as long as the money's going up and, you know, we're doing half decently in the league and this, that, and the other, I don't think they give two fucks what we accomplish. And I think Arteta has also made us quite marketable now as well, right? Like, think about it, we're putting out a new shirt every 5 minutes. So from that point of view, I think we are getting better commercially too. So I don't think there's any chance they're ever going to get rid of him unless we, you know, drop out of the Champions League or it gets real sticky. So yeah, I think it'll get sticky for fans, but it won't get sticky for the manager yet. But I will say, I don't want to talk about this too much, but there's a certain player being charged with something that could put us in the bin marketing wise. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe that contributes to Arteta in the bin, but you know, it's not. No one is infallible, and I would have to admit that our handling of the situation has been
not great.
Sitting on the fence, FC, right? So it's not nice to see. Obviously, we can't comment on it too much. You've got to say allegedly and all these other things. I think a lot more will come out over the next coming months, but there's more to be said about that whole handling of issues, how we've done things, etc., etc. So yeah, we'll return to that another time. But last question, really. Man United, off the back of 2 good results against arguably the 2 best teams in the country in terms of the last couple of seasons. Is this a launch pad for your team, mate? Are you going to start getting better in the league? Do you think is this going to be the turning point? And I don't mean that you're just going to start winning every single game, but are you going to start to see trending upwards, you know, better quality, better results against teams, better results against teams you expect to win, and maybe like a slow creep up the table? Or do you think it's just going to be, there's still a lot of struggle to come?
I think we'll this coming week is going to be a crunch week for us. We've got home games against varying levels of teams in the Premier League. We've obviously got Southampton coming up, which we'll talk about in a minute, who are like all-time Prem terrible. And then we've got Brighton on the weekend, which again we'll talk about in a minute, who are mid-table, but you know, got enough weapons to hurt us. If we can come out of those 2 games with wins, I don't care what scoreline, but wins, I'll have a strong belief that we can climb up the table. I don't think there's any chance in hell we'll get in the top 6. But if that goes well, I'll believe we'll pick up enough points to get like maybe 8th or 7th or something like that. And salvage some sort of respectability from the season from that perspective. But if we don't and we have shaky results, either draws or losses in these games, then I think we're gonna stay somewhere around where we are, and the best we can hope for is maybe edging top half of the table. But I really think it's going to be a real struggle, because what we've proven over these last couple of weeks, even before we had a bunch of losses though, with the City away win, was that when things are difficult away from home and the team naturally starts working together and has motivation and determination, and there's some unity that comes naturally from the task ahead of you, they can do it. But let's be real. If we were facing Southampton on the weekend, are you really going to be that up for it? I'm not really. No offense, Southampton, but it's not a game that captures the imagination that little kids were watching when they were growing up. Like, maybe we were, Matt Letizia and them, man. But like we, exactly. The foreigners in the team, they don't know. They probably don't know where Southampton is. So we have to be realistic. Those are the games when we can perform consistently in those games. Then I have much more confidence in these players. I'm not talking about Amrin, by the way. I have full confidence in Amrin right now. He's kind of moving in the opposite way to Arteta. He's sounding great off the pitch. On the pitch, we still need more evidence, right? And things have been shakier than they've been good. So I need the on-the-pitch stuff to match what I'm seeing off the pitch from Amrin, and then I'm okay. But I tell you what, there's been some remontadas, and I'm going to have to end this segment by apologising to a few people, because Baz Maguire, generational performances recently. Like, honestly, I didn't see it coming. Like, we did talk a little bit about the back three suiting him, but the way he's been moving, it's been impressive, man. Like, he's still got no chance of ever convincing me that 80 million was a good deal, but I can tell you what, he can be a useful player for us if he continues to play the way he has. I think Ugarte, boy, again, apologies out for anyone who thought that, he was looking stiff and shit at the beginning. He's moving mad. And I mean he's moving mad both off the ball and on the ball. He's crunching tackles, he's passing decently, he's showing the fight, he's getting involved in all the little skullduggery and shithousery stuff that we want to see from him. Like, I'm really happy with how that's turning out. And the last final apology, the gunman, Josh Xerxes, man, I have to apologise again. I did not see him having the skill set to be able to do something like that to Saliba, I'll be real. I just did not see that coming. Like, when it happened, I was rubbing my eyes being like, no chance. Like, he's done that, first of all, madness. Second of all, was that Saliba, like, crawling around on the floor? Bloody hell. I was shocked by it. And it was not only that, because that's banter aside, but he was good on the ball, man. He held up the ball. He made things stick. We had a few chances in extra time purely because he was able to trap the ball and, like, actually give us some relief. Højlund was god-awful. He was back to trying to do WWF things with Saliba and Gabriel the whole game, and he was rubbish. Like, in the second half, he improved slightly, but not good enough. And that little 30, 40-minute cameo from Xerxes, I have to say, I'm sorry, man. Like, I'm sorry. And from what I've heard, he's turned down these moves abroad, and he wants to stay to prove himself. Mate, that is mentality. To get booed by your home fans.
Mentality monsters, come on.
Yeah, mentality. Well, yeah, he needs to win stuff to be a monster, but he's showing mentality, at least. Right? Like, I have to give him credit, man, and I have to apologise for not being a believer. I'm not going to say I am, like his biggest fan and think that he's going to work in this squad. I still need to see more. But at least I'm not going to hammer him anymore going forward. And he showed me enough a glimmer of hope to be like, I apologise for what I said. Went too big on the slander too early. And yeah, even just for the Saliba dropping, like, yeah, got to apologise for that.
In an unreleased episode.
You did.
I've
but
told you.
in the lost tapes, the social media derby lost tapes, There's no evidence, right? I'm not gonna corroborate that
I
story.
might have to pull that one out, man. I might have to pull that one out as a clip just in a couple of months. But at the same time, I actually think you're going too early on it too. So I'm saying I told you so, but I think you're going too early because he's got a lot more to do, I think, to prove.
I'm not going early. I'm just saying, like, he does have a lot more to prove. But I was all like, this is done. He's not working in the system.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even a critic. Like, I wasn't trying to be critical of him as a player. Even I was just like,
it's more just a profile match. Like, does he fit to the play? Yeah.
But I'm saying I've seen a little glimmer of hope that maybe it could. He's got a hell of a lot more to do. But, you know, things that like he did on that game, and even in the Liverpool game, and even in the City game when he came on, now if I think about it, they were shorter, smaller cameos. But that one against you lot, come on, man, that's positive.
No, he was good.
I'm gonna give him a chance. Yeah.
No, and I would argue that because you can't have three big expensive strikers typically, right? So you've got two slots really for people that actually cost money, and then you've probably got one slot for somebody who's young, right? Unfortunately, as much as Højlund probably could be in both categories of young or expensive, I think most Man United fans hold him to the expensive category. So we kind of talked about this before. I don't think Højlund and Xerxes survive. And I would argue that Højlund probably fits the profile of what you want more. But the problem is, do you want two strikers that fit the exact same profile? Because let's be honest, he's not good enough. In that profile, he's not good enough to be a starter. I think we've decided that, right? He needs to be with a experienced striker and learn his trade. He's only 21 or whatever it is, 22. He's got to learn a lot of things, right? The problem is, in a squad where you've only got so many slots and you can only spend so much money, is he good enough to fill one of those two slots? And I would argue that having Xerxes offers you more variety, right? Because you've got then you end up going, you try and replace, let's say you try and get Gyökeres or somebody like that, right? You're basically replacing that Højlund. That's the Højlund profile. But do you want to have two of them? No, because when you come up against certain teams or you want to change things up, what do? You can't. It doesn't really make sense to bring on the same exact profile again. So instead, you have a Xerxes who appears to be really, really good as a target man in a defensive formation. When you're kind of compact, being pushed back, he's really good at dribbling on the ball. He's strong. He can kind of hold people off. He's a good link-up play. Yes, he doesn't have the killer instinct, but you've got other players around him that do. You've got the Amads and possibly the Garnachos and maybe the Brunos that do seem to have a killer instinct to them. Maybe he's the right one to keep. So I'm not going to comment too much more on it, but like there are serious questions. I don't think it's as closed book as just like, no, we're not going to get, we'll get rid of Xerxes and we'll just get another Højlund, a better version of Højlund in. I don't think that's as clear cut. So if Højlund keeps throwing in these stinkers, there's a chance.
It's all to play for.
I think
it's all to play for.
Højlund's probably winning on points right now, but if he keeps stinking it up and doing WWE and trying to back his ass up into players, he might have a problem. Because Xerxes, like you said, he might have more heart. He might want it more. Yeah,
I agree. I think it's all to play for, man. Like I said, I'm not gonna do. I'm doing my best to never get too embroiled in the player FC stuff. Contrary to what some of our mates will say. Like I don't care, man. The best players play. The players that show us the most play. I'm not wedded to any of them, and I agree with you. I need to see more from Xerxes, but what he's done recently has moved me a little bit. And Højlund has certainly not done enough for me to rule that out. I think it's let them have at it, man. May the best man win, and I agree with you. They're going to get another striker in, so they're both not surviving. One of them will hit their bodies will hit the floor, to use the old wrestling song's theme tune, and one of them will go. So I don't care, man. Whoever proves it, that's all that matters to me. And whoever Ruben wants is all that matters as well.
Big Ruben interim. Let's go. All right, let's get into